Welcome to the Artifacts Show on City Cable 34. We talk about the arts and related issues here in Minneapolis and the Minneapolis area. Later on, we're going to have Christopher Bays talk about the show he's going to be starting at Jeune, Lune, and we're going to have some guests on from the City Children's Nutcracker show, and we're going to have John Kalaki on from the Walker Arts Center. But first, I'm excited to have on the show Peter and Gordon. Well, actually, Peter Krause and Gordon Purcell, two artists, comic book artists. And a guest we had on last summer actually recommended we get you guys on to talk about some of the interesting things you're doing. That was David Mers. We had him on in the summer. So thanks and welcome for being here.
Hello.
Thanks and welcome for being here.
Happy to be here.
What are the projects you guys are working on right now? Peter, what are the probably best known things you're doing?
Well, for the last 3 years, I basically have been doing the comic book adaptation of Star Trek: The Next Generation. And right now, and that's for DC Comics, right now I'm working on Metropolis Special Crimes Unit. It's a spin-off from the Superman books, using a lot of the supporting characters. A little bit of Superman, a lot of Lois Lane, a lot of Maggie Sawyer, and who's the head of the Special Crimes Unit, and really kind of focuses on her.
Okay, I want to get back to some of that in a minute.
Okay,
but Gordon, what are you working on?
Well, my main job is Star Trek. Right now it's Star Trek Deep Space Nine for Malibu Comics, but I bounce around a lot. I'm doing some Star Trek work for DC, where I did the classic Star Trek for about 3 years. You know, Kirk and Spock,
Yeah.
the real guys.
Yeah.
And I did Titans there and Flash, and I did some Legionnaire work.
Sure.
I'm doing, for Marvel, I have a What If that comes out in December.
Explain that if you would. What if?
Well, What If is like alternative plot lines. Like, what would happen if something else happened instead of what happened in the Marvel Universe? In this case, the first time you ever met a popular character called Punisher, he was stalking Spider-Man. Well, what would happen if he actually had killed Spider-Man? And so basically, all the superheroes try to beat him up, and all the supervillains try to give him a roast. And yet he's actually against crime, so he sees all the supervillains there and toasts them all.
Okay, and that's a project you're working on?
I just finished that, but it comes out in December.
Okay.
But I did Mad Dog miniseries, Wonder Man.
Now, for those who don't know about Mad Dog,
Oh, that's a spin-off from the Bob Newhart, the current Bob show. The first season, he wrote and drew a comic book called Mad Dog. And so we had a comic.
well, look, you just happen to have it here.
This is one issue of it. There are two versions of it. One is the Bob Newhart version, the character he played. He's a nice guy, right? And so there's a comic that's very 60s looking, like a DC comic. It's kind of silly and funny, where my side is more like the writer on the show, it's more like a Marvel comic, which is the company that put it out, and it's more like Wolverine. He's a little more kick butt, you know, that kind of guy, you know.
Yeah, hold
more
one
savage.
long enough here for our camera to catch it, because some of those images are a little more...
well, you know, they're more growling at each other
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Sure.
You know, more monster shots and stuff like that, a little more fighting, I
So
guess.
Bob Newhart's television vision comes to life right here in the Twin Cities area.
Right, right. And so, and also, I mean, speaking of adaptations, I did Young Indiana Jones also.
Oh, all right.
And hopefully we have a Star Trek crossover for next year that I'll know more about next year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, and I bounce around. I did Avengers, which is a popular group, and Wonder Man, and Luke Cage, Power Man.
Sounds like a lot of fun. You having fun doing it?
Yeah, yeah. I actually, the licensed books, the ones that have to have actors in it, are a little harder to do. They take a little more research, because you have to really look like, it has to look like William Shatner, not just like anybody, you know. If I have to draw Superman, it can be my version of Superman.
Right.
If I draw William Shatner, it has to be William Shatner.
It has to, because you got a million fans out there that know exactly what he looks like.
And since I was a fan of Star Trek comics, I think that's important, because when I was growing up, when we both were growing up, they would have the Star Trek comic. You couldn't tell who Chekhov and Kirk were. They looked the same. The ship was landing on planets, you know.
Kind of generic Star Trek.
Yeah, they just, you know, they didn't have. So we want to make sure that they really.
Is that partly a function of a more sophisticated reading audience? Just demanding more of that?
I think so. And also, times have changed with the licensed products. Now, with the classic Trek, I mean, there weren't the adaptations. There was no idea that those things would happen. Because Star Trek has had such a long life after the TV show with the movies and toys and that sort of thing, when you have something like Next Generation now, the characters, some of the actors have likeness clauses written into their contract, so they review all these things. And as a result of that, things are a little more demanding. It's a little more high profile as a result. So yeah, stakes are definitely higher.
Yeah. Now,
so.
how does it literally work? I mean, you do some drafts, and it goes out in the mail, and they or their agent or somebody actually gets to
A variety of ways. Basically, I will do the drawings, and Gordon and I both do what's called the pencils. We will get a script from the writer.
Here
I think you each have a couple of examples here.
This is how, what we would do is the pencil version.
Okay.
So this is obviously Kirk and Picard from the two Star Trek books. And so we just put it all down in pencil form. They usually shoot a Xerox off to Paramount, and then Paramount will distribute it to the actors who have rights. In this case, I think Riker, the actors who play Riker and Picard, had likeness rights at this time. I think the whole cast of Next Generation, unfortunately, fortunately for them, unfortunately for the artists, have the likeness rights now. After that, if this does get approved without changes, it goes to an ink form.
And this is back on your drawing boards.
Right. This actually went to Jerome Moore to ink.
Okay.
And actually there are some changes, subtle changes, but
Here, I can grab this.
Riker at the bottom of my picture has a phaser.
Yeah.
And that was too implied violence,
Okay.
which they don't like to do in Next Generation so much. So now he's got a tricorder.
Okay.
So he's a lot gentler, and he's smiling there.
Yeah.
And I think Spock is actually smiling a little more in the inked version.
Yeah.
So I mean,
He looks a little older and wiser and
Showing some
happier.
Vulcan emotion.
right.
Sure.
It goes. There's a step in between too where they go to a pencil form, or they put the word balloons on, and then the last step is they shrink it down and lay on color, and you can see that color separates. The black film is basically what we've drawn, and then underneath they separate it into yellow, red, blue,
Sure.
and black.
Pop it all on and you get John Tesh.
Yes, well, in the first two issues of Deep Space Nine, John Tesh played a kind of a captain with a weird agenda because he's a big Star Trek fan. And
Okay, so he wanted to get in.
yeah, he just wanted to get in on the action.
Now, just before we sat down to talk, Peter, you were telling me that in one of your projects that has a connection to a current television show,
Right,
there's some changes going on with the grooming of the stars, and that translates into what you're doing. Can you?
Well, part of it is coincidence, and part of it is because of the TV show. You know, with the Metropolis Special Crimes Unit, which is a Superman spin-off, and we do have Superman appear in it, and probably a lot of people did read the hype about Superman dying last year, which he actually did, and I won't go into all the exact reasons why he's back now, but through a number of circumstances, he is back, and Dan Jurgens, who is one of the local artists, comic book artists, writers here in town, who does work on Superman on a regular basis, started drawing him with the longer hair. And Mike Carlin, the editor, who is out in New York for DC, liked it. He said, let's keep that. Well, we do have now a Superman show on, Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, which is on ABC on Sunday nights at 7 here. And that Clark has a little bit longer hair. Also, we have a Lois, Terry Hatcher, who's also appeared on Seinfeld, who has a hairdo. It's been different than the way Lois has been in the book, and Mike Carlin thought it would be a good idea then to tie that image a little bit closer.
Did you bring one of those with?
I've got
Maybe
a
we could take a look
photocopy
at
here, if we can
some of your work
page
here.
through it here. Here's, in the Metropolis Special Crimes Unit, Lois is working on a story. Again, this is a photocopy of a pencil, penciled page, so we do not have any color or word balloons in here, but Lois is working in the Daily Planet here, and she's pondering a story that she's working on right now. But you can see that in the past, at least last few years anyway, Lois has had longer, wavier hair. Decided to try to reflect what was going on.
More contemporary or something.
Right.
Sure.
Reflect what's going on in the TV show for anyone who's watching the TV show and decides to pick up the comic.
He says, the chief says great shades of Elvis now instead of Great Caesar's Ghost.
Yeah, a little more contemporary, that's
so
right.
they're adding some of that into the comic, too.
Gentlemen, we've got about 1 more minute. Time's really gone on this. But I wanted to ask one question, as long as I've got people that are in the business.
Sure.
Any big interesting trends that we're going to, as consumers, as people who like to read this, coming up?
Well, comics really are very popular right now.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have caught on. It's something you can collect on one level. You can read, you can appreciate the art. It's kind of a unique art form. It is right now very hot as a collectible, more hot than I would have predicted. So there are a lot of people out there who are thinking that they can buy their a new car or something by cashing in their comics in 3 years. That might not happen.
Yeah.
You may not hit a lucky comic. There's also a lot of artists are being asked to sign comics and stuff like that, and so that's a trend that's happening right now. I don't know where that's going to lead, but if you ever watch a home shopping club sort of show,
Be prepared to see them.
there are a lot of signed comics now.
I just think that things are, the stakes, like you were saying, are higher. It's much higher profile business where it's going into TV and these things. You're going to have creators who are becoming celebrities in their own rights now. This is something that's never was foreseen in the past.
I've never seen so many people trying to break into the business.
And it's a
as
pretty
they are
big
now.
industry right here in the Minneapolis area.
Right.
Yeah, there's probably about 10 people who work fairly full-time at it here, which is a pretty high percentage
Yeah, given
for
the
a city.
national.
Yeah, most people live in New York because that's where the offices are, or California if you work at one of the other companies.
Well, gentlemen, we'll have to carry this on another time. I want to
Sure.
keep staying in touch with what you're
Sure.
doing. Gordon, thanks for
Absolutely.
coming on.
Nice to meet you.
Peter,
Thank you.
thanks for coming down.
Okay.
Okay.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah. And we'll be back with our next guest in just a moment. But please first take a look at this interesting factoid. And we're back. And I always find those factoids interesting because I learn something every time we put something up there. And our next guest here is Christopher Bays, a gentleman I've talked with a number of times on the phone. And some of you may have seen him when he worked with Theatre de la Jeune Lune. And in fact, he's going to do a show that will be produced in that space. And he's here to talk about it. Thanks for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having me.
And the name of the show is This Ridiculous Dreaming.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, it's based on a novel by Heinrich Böll called The Clown. And it's a script that I've been working on for a couple of years with a playwright named Bill Corbett, and Michael Summers is doing the design for it. And it was actually originally commissioned by the Guthrie, where have been working for about 4 years now. And they commissioned the piece through what's called a Performers Bureau, and which is a series where they encourage actors to create material of their own.
We're going to take a look, just as you describe it a little bit more. You brought the poster for it, so
Yes.
our viewers can take a good look at not the happiest looking clown there.
No, he's clearly a clown that's not real pleased.
Yeah. Now, what is it that's not making him pleased?
Well, a lot of things, actually. He's, I've been trying to find different ways to talk about this show and talk about how, how clowns live in the world, and coming from Heinrich Böll's novel, it's really a piece that happens in post-war Germany, and he grew up during the Third Reich and all of these things, but basically it's a story of a very pissed off clown who takes a journey through his head and manages to come out the other side sort of cleansed.
And this is a solo show.
Yeah,
so
it's a
that's
one-man
the first
show.
thing that comes to mind is that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges in here? Working, do you speak in this? There must
Yeah,
be
there's a
of
lot. There's a lot of speaking. I mean, the first biggest challenge is the challenge of memory for me to just remember all the words.
Yeah.
But it's also a very physical piece, and it's very funny. It's very magical, and it also has some very dark elements to it. But so physically, it's very challenging. Also, there's a big section of the show that's very violent, and I end up falling to the ground quite a few times.
So physically challenging, just getting punished yourself on the stage there.
Yeah, I'm trying to find a way that maybe the floor is a little more padded than it was the last time I did it. When I did it at the Southern at the Southern Theater in March of last year as a work in progress, and this is sort of the culmination of that work. We've been back working
Now,
on
you
it
mentioned
again.
that this came out of a program at the Guthrie. Can you
Yeah.
describe that? I think that's an interesting partnership there.
It's a program where they, as I said before, they encourage actors in the acting company to create pieces of their own small 1 or 2 person shows that they can send on the road as sort of an outreach program and take little tours. And one of the only criteria of the Performers Bureau program is that the show should be able to fit in the back of a van.
Okay.
So
Keep certain costs down.
yeah, I mean, so it just can go out and you know, go to Red Wing or go to Duluth or go to Iowa, within the 5-state area, basically.
Yeah, so they were supportive in that sense. It sounds like a great program for the Guthrie to do.
Yeah.
Now, why is it going to be physically over at the wonderful Jeune space?
Well,
It's available.
yeah, it's available, and I wanted to do the show again after the work in progress production last winter, and it turns out that the people from Lune are going to be doing their show, The Green Bird, at the Yale Repertory Theater for 5 weeks. So the Jeune space was dark, and since I have a history with them, I began talking with them about the possibilities of using it during that time.
Good
And
space.
it's fabulous, beautiful
And my
space.
sense is, as you describe the show a little bit, that it will fit well with the theme of the clown here.
Yeah.
Or this ridiculous dreaming.
Yeah.
And before we forget, let's right away let people know when this is happening. What are the dates here?
It opens November 19th and runs through December 12th, Thursday through Sunday. I'm doing the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and I'm not doing Thanksgiving night, but then I do that weekend. And there'll be one matinee on December 5th, I believe. And so there's only 15 performances.
Yeah.
So
And if people wanted to find out about tickets, they'd call?
they would call Theatre de la Jeune Lune box office at 333-6200.
Okay, and we'll put that up on the screen here.
Great.
That sounds good. Now, what does it take to create the show? First, there's the support from the Guthrie. You had to raise some money, obviously.
I had to raise some money because I'm producing the show myself at the Jeune Lune space. And I was very lucky to get a grant from the Minnesota State Arts Board, Career Opportunity Grant, to help pay some of the people and who are designing the show. Michael Summers is designing the show, and
Yeah.
it's, you know, I mean,
You're working with good people.
Yeah, fabulous
Now, how did you connect with Michael? You'd worked with him before? Or?
I know Michael for years from working at Jeune Lune
Okay.
when I was there, and
Sure.
Bill Corbett I met through the Guthrie.
Yep.
He worked on a couple shows there,
Yeah.
and he's a Jerome Fellow at the Playwright Center, and
We had him on this show a couple years ago. He's one of our first guests. Yeah.
he's great, brilliant. All these guys are so brilliant.
After This Ridiculous Dreaming, what are some new projects here for Christopher?
Well, I got some ideas for other one-person shows and other collaborations that I'm thinking about, but also, as I said, I've been a member of the Guthrie Acting Company for about 4 years now, and I think I'll probably take a little vacation and then see what's going on next season at the Guthrie.
Yeah, so you've been busy.
I've been very busy.
Very busy, yeah. Is that a stretch to go from everything that the Guthrie implies with, let's face it, I mean, the resources they can bring in there and the talent and the company to a one-person show and to works in progress? I mean, that's, again, in itself kind of a stretch, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been really hard to find the time just because of the crazy repertory schedule. You know, there'll be times during the season at the Guthrie where you'll be carrying 6 scripts around with you. You know, you'll be understudying and working on your lines for one show and your performance for 2 other shows. And so it's hard to find the time, but I managed to finagle it, you know, to scavenge some time to sit down and really do the work. And it's been such a pleasure for me to really not only work with the people that I've been collaborating with on the show, Michael and Bill and Steve Epp. I worked with a lot with Steve Epp on the show from Jeune Lune. But it's been a really satisfying experience and really challenging in a way because the ideas are really ripe and really start to crackle when you're working with people that you know pretty well.
Who do you hope comes to see your show?
Everybody.
Everybody.
Should come and see the
Just
show.
come and see the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's, you know, as I said, it's sort of a challenging piece, but it's also very, very funny, and the language of Heinrich Bowles and Bill Corbett's adaptation is just beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, so it has a lot of elements in it that I think people will.
Sounds
really
like a nice balance between the physical that you were describing. I mean, you end up on a floor, you said a few times, but there's a lot of verbal element to it as well.
Yeah, the language is very beautiful, and some of it's very tragic, but ultimately I think it's a story of transcendence too. So.
Yeah, so it sounds universal in some ways, but you mentioned that coming out of Bowles' earlier work, that is it a metaphor for post-war Germany? Or?
Well, that's when originally it takes place, but I think the fact that he's taken a clown, it's a story of this clown who's just in despair.
Yeah.
This image for Heinrich Böll, I think, was very powerful for the post-war Germans trying to struggle with this whole hypocrisy of collective consciousness and all of that stuff.
Well, and that
trying to
innocence that a
heal.
clown implies, given the tragedy and all that must be coming through in this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what got you started? I mean, you've mentioned some pretty high-name organizations here. I mean, the Jeune Lune and the Guthrie, you're doing solo performing. What got you involved in all this?
Well, I think it started, I mean, what started me in theater,
Yeah.
actually I started as a magician. When I was about 10 years old, I read a book about Houdini and had my friends tie me up and throw me in a swimming pool.
These are your friends?
These are my friends. Yeah, I asked them to do it. They didn't really want to do it, I don't think. But
I suppose if they hadn't been your friends, they wouldn't have thrown you in. They would
That's
just
right.
let you sit there. Yeah.
they say, no,
Okay.
you want to do this too much.
Yeah, yeah.
So I started as a magician and did that. I was, you know, doing my own shows when I was 12 years old. You know, I was making a pretty good living.
Seriously?
Doing birthday parties and all
People
kinds
don't
of
know,
stuff.
but that variety stuff can.
Oh yeah,
add
it's a
up.
big business.
Yeah.
And then I hit adolescence and puberty, and that was probably the most uncool thing to be doing at that time. So I started doing theater instead, and I've gone back over the years to finding a marriage between those, because the power of illusion, I think, is really important in
So
in theater.
if it's appropriate, you'll put some of those elements in a given show that you're involved
Oh,
in.
there's a lot of elements actually in this ridiculous
great.
dreaming that are very magical and very.
Yeah.
The clown in the show is he says often that he's a victim of his own imagination. So he takes these little journeys in his apartment. He'll go on. He has a little vacation where this trunk becomes a little field, and the sun is attached to an umbrella. So he takes a little vacation, and then he goes to the city, and there's a little city that he builds, and things will appear and disappear. There's a lot of butterflies in the show that fly around his head, sort of these little angels.
Now, given that you're in the Jeune Lune space, you're in the warehouse district in downtown Minneapolis, are you staging it, blocking it somewhat differently than you were able to do at the Southern? Is there a change there?
A little bit, yeah. The space is so much bigger
Yeah.
than it was at the Southern. We're trying to find different design elements to fill it, and also it's going to be a challenge vocally just because it's so big.
Yeah.
But I think from working at the Guthrie, I mean, those 1,400 seats or whatever it is
Yeah.
there, you learn to speak up.
A little projection there. Yeah, that's good. Besides the theater you do, and your friends in theater, what else do you like to go and see here in the Twin Cities? What do you like to go and do on a rare night off?
Well, I like to, theaters, it's very odd. It's sort of disconcerting for me that theater becomes harder and harder to go and see because it's your job.
Yeah. It's not a night off when you know you've closed your show and then, hey, let's go see some theater.
Yeah, although sometimes I get very excited. I mean, I love Bad Jazz. I just went to see Bad Jazz last week.
They were down at the Jungle.
Yeah, they were at the Jungle.
Yeah.
Just hilarious and very funny.
Sure. What kind of theater that's being done now do you like particularly? I mean, is it the stuff that verges into some of these different disciplines, like with the variety arts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I tend to like to go to see things that are a little stranger.
Yeah.
Things that are not normally, I would say, presented. That are breaking some boundaries in terms of theater. But as I said, it's hard for me to get to them, especially when I was working at the Guthrie.
And you're working when most other people are.
Yeah, I mean, those are my
yeah.
nights are my work nights.
Well,
you
we've
know.
got just another moment. One more time, I want you to tell us when and where people can come and see this ridiculous dreaming.
Okay, it's going to be at the Theatre de la Jeune Lune space, November 19th to December 12th. You can call 333-6200 to get tickets. Please come and see it.
Okay, Christopher, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
Break a leg.
Thanks.
And we'll be back in a moment with John Kalaki, but first, let's call the Artsphone and see what's up.
Welcome to Artsphone, the Twin Cities Arts Information Line. You can use this service whether or not you have touch tone. It even works from a rotary phone. Press 1 for the Artsphone hotline. Press 2 to leave a message in the Artsphone. Welcome to the Artsphone hotline. Please note that the hotline is updated every Friday afternoon. Press 1 for theater events or 2 for other arts events featuring Carolyn Ruff Gallery, Intermedia Arts, and press 1 to search by spelling the name of a theater. Press 2 to search by spelling the title of a play. Or press 3 for a list of. For comedies, press 1. For dramas, press 2. For musicals, press 3. For children's theater and other theater, press 4. You're going to hear a list of groups. At any time during this list, you can press Press 1 to be transferred to the group you're listening to, or press 2 to skip to the next group, or press 3 to exit the list. Mixed Blood Theater. Mixed Blood Theater presents 2 shows in rep, a lively mix of song and dialogue, My Name is Still Alice, and The Snowflake Avalanche, opening at 8 p.m. Wednesday, October 6th.
And we're back, and I urge everybody, give a call to the Artsphone and make use of it and find out what's going on in the cities. So, the next guest here is John Kilacki. He's the curator over at the Walker Arts Center, downtown Minneapolis. And he's somebody I've been hoping and trying to get on the show for a while, and he's so busy that it's taken us a few months to get the schedule coordinated. So John, thanks for being on the show.
Well, thanks for having me here, Phil.
Yeah. And I want to start right with your title. You are a curator at the Walker Arts Center, and for the benefit of folks that are watching thinking, oh, okay, so he's one of those guys that puts art up on the wall and paintings and arranges sculpture. That is not what you do at the Walker Arts Center.
No, I put living art in the, I guess, in the dark spaces at the Walker and around
Yeah.
town. And you know, the Walker Arts Center right now is the largest museum-based presenter of the performing arts. We know in the United States, and we suspect in the world. And my program brings in about 100 artists every year: dance, theater, music, from the classical to the profane.
Yes.
From the old to the young. Just last month, we had an 87-year-old Buto master from Japan performing. And coming up, in December, we'll have a 22-year-old playwright. So I think it's the whole mix we do.
Yeah.
The Walker started its program actually in the 50s with a jazz program,
didn't know that.
with its museum. So it's been really 40 years of presenting performing arts at the Walker.
Yeah,
In all of its different locations, because the current location only was built in '71.
that's right. And as I recall, now that you mentioned, was it Center Opera got its start, or a lot of support anyhow at the Walker?
Well, Center Opera Company was an initiative of the Walker Art Center.
Okay.
In '63, when the Guthrie Theater opened, the Guthrie Theater only wanted to use the space 1/3 of the time. And since it was Walker land, the Walker was really running the space at that point.
Right.
And so Center Opera Company started with people like Robert Israel and David Hockney designing sets for contemporary opera. And then once that got big enough, the Walker said, okay, off you go.
Boy, what times
You're
those
on your
must have
own.
been. When you mentioned Hockney, I remember some exhibits that the Institute of Arts would have of his work. I did not realize he was in doing
Yeah.
sets and things.
Well, and the Walker did that wonderful show, Hockney Paints the Stage.
Yes, that's
couple of years
right.
ago.
Yeah.
Same thing with the Live from Off-Center Television that is now based at KTCA here in the Twin Cities. That started as a collaborative initiative between the media arts program at the Walker and the performing arts program at the Walker. And
Right.
sort of when that got as big as it is now, the Walker again said,
Go
ahead.
forth and prosper. Yeah.
So
And, and you're right to bring that up, because the media arts, which is the film and the video and those sort of things, there's yet, what, another curator that
Yes.
takes care of that?
And this is now my 6th season at the Walker, and when I came, Martin Friedman was still the director, and my title was Director of Performing Arts. And so when Kathy Halbreich, our current director, came 3 years ago, she said, why are you called director? Why aren't you called a curator like everybody else? I said, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
That was the title I inherited.
Yeah.
So in fact, what's been terrific about it is that I sit in on all curatorial meetings for the visual arts folks and the performing arts folks and the media art folks. Now talk at the table about all the planning together. So we have the opportunity then to plan programs that relate to one another.
Okay, so some kind of cross-disciplinary
Right.
integration of those.
We now kind of call ourselves a multidisciplinary center that seeks interdisciplinary links. So right now up at the Walker we have a Brazilian exhibition by Helio Odesica that runs through the winter. And when we opened it in late October, what I did in my program is bring Tom Zé, who's a Brazilian pop artist. He's much like a David Byrne here in America. Very intelligent. He had been a poet in the 60s, and then he went into the pop idiom, and is a huge pop star in Brazil. And we had him open the performative side of things. The film and video department all through the month of November is going to be doing Cinema Marginal, which is Brazilian avant-garde filmmakers from the 60s to current day. So it's a way for us to look at what's on the walls and to kind of cross-reference the work and kind of provide a context and a way for all of us to begin to talk about how the art forms influence one another.
Yeah, and as a museum goer, I find that that helps me a lot because I'm getting different dimensions, say, of either of a country or a region of the world or perhaps a movement in time that's going on.
Yeah.
How do you get your contacts and your ideas? I mean, how do you find this fellow out of Brazil or your Buto performer?
Well, I've been doing this for 20 years
Okay.
in different ways. I started as a dancer and have been working on this side as a curator now for 6 years at the Walker. I have a great opportunity to travel. A lot of countries around the world now are inviting me at their expense to come. I spent a month in Bulgaria. I've been in recently all over Central Europe. I'm going to Berlin in February, and to see work, to see artists from those different countries. I was in Mexico this summer. And I look at both what exhibitions are being planned at the Walker, and also what the performing arts component can provide for added value in the community. I mean, when we have the talent of Chris Bass and his wonderful shows, and the work he's doing at Jeune, Lune, or at the Guthrie, or the solo work that he's doing right now, I don't want to compete with that. No need to do that. I want to provide alternatives to that, different kinds of work. So I really look at what's here, and then I see what I can provide that's not here. As well, I mentioned, our 87-year-old Buto master. It's important to me that in the avant-garde we recognize the leaders, that we really say this isn't invented overnight, that there's traditions in all of these forms, and even the most outrageous iconoclast of today is following a tradition that is centuries old in the arts.
Yeah.
And so, there may be new forms of expression, but, going up against the grain and trying to break formalist notions isn't new in the arts.
And as wide-ranging as you are with people and forms and parts of the world, I'll bet, is there a frustration that you don't have enough stage time and enough opportunities to bring everybody to town that you'd like to?
Well, right now we're in the middle of what I'm calling a World Visions Festival of performing arts, and we've had Tom Zay, the Brazilian artist. This month in November, we're having a Siberian throat singer come, and she's terrific. Nam Chunk is her name, and she's going to be at the Walker on November 13th.
Okay.
And then a week later, we have Amanda Miller coming from Frankfurt, Germany, who's a classical ballet choreographer, but she's working in very much of a pop vernacular, much like the Joffrey's billboards, that kind of taking contemporary aesthetics and making ballet sexy and fun and having a good time with it. I do a World Vision series every other year, and we usually represent 8 or 9 different countries. I'd love to do that year-round, but the resources are immense to do that.
Yeah.
And also, there's so much happening in the Twin Cities that I'm not sure that I think we'd start competing with one another a little too much if we programmed all
Is there
the time.
anything missing in the Twin Cities, something that you would like to see here, maybe on a regular basis? I mean, some art form or discipline that just isn't getting enough of the exposure?
Well, every time I hear what's missing, I try to bring it.
Yeah.
Now, you have not made your performance art debut yet, Phil. So
Not yet.
I'm hoping that, in fact, you will. In fact, up in February, for Valentine's Day, we're having something called the Love Bash at the Walker Art Center. And I was thinking of different artists that I know who would be fun to have around the issue of love, relationships, Valentine's Day. And Rebecca Rand.
Oh,
Is
interesting.
actually going to make her performance debut at the Walker Art Center
Interesting idea.
on Valentine's Day with a bunch of other artists doing things.
Sure.
And she's going to do a reading or something. So what's missing is probably you doing something. So we'll find an opportunity
We'll
this
see.
year for you to make
We'll
your
get a
performance
proposal
art
in.
debut.
That sounds good. Now you mentioned Rebecca Rand. I think that's a great stroke. Just why not bring her in for this sort of thing? You push the edge sometimes. Are you up against what, on a national level, the NEA has had to face, where they put thousands of things out, support a lot of artists, and then 1 or 2 things catch the attention of the media or a certain segment of the public? Have you been getting hit for some of the things that you bring in, and how do you deal with that?
Well, in 1990, we had a series at the Walker called Cultural Infidels, and that opened with Karen Finley. It was the reviews from that particular show that Senator Helms saw and got so upset and started the cultural war of the past 3 years. And of the 4 artists at the National Endowment for the Arts censored, Karen Finley, Tim Miller, Holly Hughes, and John Fleck, 3 of them had been there previously. And what I'm glad about is that the Walker did support these artists before they were considered such infidels or pariahs from the... and so I think we try to support artists in a very proactive way rather than a reactionary way. We have, at the Walker, been under considerable pressure about some of these artists. I personally have been under considerable pressure, even in this community. I've gotten many outrageous letters and some death threats in the mail about me for bringing some of these artists in. And in the end, Phil, I think it shows how powerful the arts can be, how really potent an artist can bring, the issues they can bring. So in a funny way, it encourages me all the more that these artists do have a power that's necessary to be heard, that it's like a safety valve in our communities. Last year we did a production by Reza Abdo that talked about the Jeffrey Dahmer story. And to me, as long as the Jeffrey Dahmers exist in our society, our artists should be allowed to reflect those issues too. Now, you know, I do 100 different artists each year, so we have classical string quartets along with the radical performance artists. And I think that that's the part that's essential, is that we have the elders and the young ones. We have the radicals and the formalists. Because to me, it's in a contemporary art aesthetic dialogue that I try to have at the Walker, it's all about the whole ecology and all of them.
Yeah. John, we've got about a moment left. What else is coming to the Walker in November? Anything else you want to mention?
Well, the Russian throat singer and Amanda Miller, she's going to be at Northrop Auditorium on the 18th. And then right at the beginning of December, December 4th, we have the Nuyorican Poets going to be in residence, and that's a partnership with the Loft. And these folks are going to be doing poetry slams all over town, and the grand finale slam is going to be at the Walker on December 4th, and that should be fun. They're really revitalizing the whole form of poetry.
I look forward to that. John, we could go on. I hope to have you back.
Thanks.
John Kalacki, thanks for being on. And we'll be back in a moment with some guests from the City Children's Nutcracker Project, but to lead into that, let's take a listen to the Greater Twin Cities Youth Symphonies, who will be part of that performance. And we're back. What you were just looking at was Bill Jones conducting a rehearsal for the upcoming City Children's Nutcracker, and our crew went out and taped that just not too many days ago. So that was relatively recent. Later on, as we talk with our guests here, we're going to be seeing a couple clips from the City Children's Nutcracker last year, which was held at Northrop, and again in December of this year will be year 2 of that. But let me introduce the guests here, including some of the dancers who I'm honored to have here. Tiana Bailey, and her mom, Toni Coleman, and Brooke Halsey. So thanks for all coming down and being on the show. And this, I understand, is your second year, Tiana?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything different for you this year? I mean, you danced last year and you're dancing this year. What's different for you this year?
Well, we're learning new things, and it's getting a little harder.
Is it?
Yeah.
So they're challenging you a little bit more. What kind of new things? You mean like new dance positions or new steps or
Yeah,
what?
and new steps and learning how to do things better than what we did last year.
Yeah.
Basically.
So you liked it enough last year to come back?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For people who are watching that don't know what the City Children's Nutcracker is, how does it work? I mean, where are you getting these classes and this training?
Well, either you can go to Ballet Arts or you can go to Parks, Powderhorn, and Fairview. They teach there too. So to learn the same things that you do at Ballet Arts,
Yeah.
but at different times, sort of.
Okay. And if they were to do this again next year, would you do it again?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it fun performing in a place as big as Northrop?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Yeah. It's a huge house. It's huge out there. When you're standing up there on stage, and you're probably not on stage alone, you've probably got other people dancing with you, and you look out at that, I mean, can you actually see people?
Yeah, sometimes I try to find my mom
Yeah.
or my dad
Yeah.
looking out there because I don't like to look at the other people that make me sort of nervous.
Yeah, so you stay more centered on your movement and the dance and that part that you're supposed to do. Who's teaching you? Do you remember who
Deidre. Her name is Deidre.
Okay, Deidre Kellogg-Rush.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. And Brooke, I saw you at a little preview of this, but I don't know, were you in it last year?
Yes.
Okay.
I've danced with Bonnie and Marcia, who are the co-directors of Ballet Arts Minnesota, since I was 7.
Okay, so you've been doing it a while?
Yep.
Yeah. And how old are you, if I may ask, Tana?
11.
11? Okay. And those are good ages to start dancing, as I understand it. This is not something you get into in your 20s or something.
Yeah, well, you still can take class. But
Yeah. But I would imagine, just looking at you two, you're pretty limber. I mean, you can probably do things that somebody my age probably couldn't do out there on stage. Yeah. And Toni, one reason you're on is because you serve on the steering committee, which helps put this whole thing together. And you're also a mom. And I wanted to ask, what has that been like? What was it that attracted you to the Nutcracker project here?
Well, I've always loved dancing. I danced at the parks when I was very young. In fact, I danced at Martin Luther King Park.
Okay.
I took tap there, and we had recitals down at Phill. And
Oh,
so
sure.
she's my only daughter, and I've always wanted a daughter to do some type of art
Great.
performing, and
Well-
she liked it. And she started when she was 3.
Oh, 3 years old. So you've been dancing a while. Okay. And how did you hear about this particular, because there are a lot of Nutcrackers that come to town.
Okay,
how'd you hear about this
Tiana
one?
took a workshop at King Park, and Deidre was her teacher and told her about that they were going to do this project. And she took our name and number and contacted us in October when it started.
Great.
That's how I got involved.
Okay.
And it's been a wonderful experience to be backstage at Northrop and see all the sparkle in the kids' eyes, and just to see them come alive on the stage. It's just been...
That was my favorite part, too, is just watching all the dancers just having fun. I know you're working. I mean, it's not easy, because is it hard? You have to, I don't dance, not that kind of dancing. You got to memorize things, though.
yes.
How hard is that?
Well, that just, as the years go by, just comes kind of natural, I guess.
Yeah?
Because you just learn them, and I can remember a few pieces from when I was younger, because it just sticks in your mind.
Okay, so it's like riding a bike in that sense? I mean, once you kind of get it. Did you count in certain numbers or something? How does that work? Is there a beat or a rhythm that you memorize certain steps? How do they teach you?
Well, go ahead.
What they do when you're learning it, they let you listen to the music while you dance, and so it sort of gets in your mind, and then you just sort of memorize the music, because you sort of, what I do is I say it through my head. I just keep sort of saying the number and listen to the music, and I just remember it.
Okay. See, I'm very verbal, so I very much have a hard time memorizing, the foxtrot, let alone ballet or something like that. Interesting. So you both had the experience last year then of working with people like, I know they bring in Daniel Ezralo,
Yep.
and they have some principals from the Dance Theater of Harlem, and then other choreographers. What was that like, working with some of these people who have kind of big names, if you will?
Well, I didn't have a chance to work with Daniel Ezralo.
Okay.
The other level did, but the other choreographers were Bonnie Mathis, and almost all the ballet teachers did some kind of choreography, and so that was a good experience that I'll have for the future. if I want to join a company, to work with different choreographers and how they like choreograph, I guess.
Yeah.
Since each one does it in their own individual way.
Is it hard as a dancer then to kind of get that sensitivity to the different choreographer?
Yeah, I think you kind of get a sense of the way they do things, and so you know the point of view that they take in teaching.
Is that a reason that sometimes a dancer will want to stay with one choreographer? I mean, there are people that have a whole career with one company or one.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, okay. Where do you want to go with your dance?
I would like to join the Joffrey Ballet
Oh, you
someday.
wanna- Yeah. How would somebody do that? I mean, you get the experience and the training that you've been doing. Is it an audition process?
Yes, well, with the Joffrey Ballet, you can audition for the junior company, and then sooner or later you might have the opportunity to go up to the next level and be asked to be in the company with a contract. But
Take it a step at a time.
yeah.
Tiana, how about yourself? You get, as the years go on, you thinking of keeping on with the dancing, or?
Yeah,
Yeah?
probably so. Yeah.
Now, just before we started taping this, you were saying you're a kid in school, you do all kinds of other things. What else do you like in school besides art?
I probably like gym.
You like gym? Okay, so
That's
that's real physical too.
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah? How about that science project you were telling me about?
It's okay, yes,
Is
but
it?
it's really hard
Yeah?
because we're trying to. See, it's sort of hard to cooperate with a lot of kids that
Yeah.
if they don't like your idea, it's sort of really hard.
But that is a project that you're working on with other kids.
Yeah.
And you do the same thing in a way with the dance, right? Because you got, we're going to see, in fact, maybe we could start rolling that now and get a view of some of the things that was going on at Northrop with the City Children's Nutcracker last year. And as we cue that up, really you're doing the same thing. You're working with a lot of other kids and other dancers and things like that. Is that hard to not step on each other or get the timing down?
Well, not really, because most of the kids I work with, I like them, so it's sort of easy.
So you're not
to
going
get
to
on.
step on them.
Yeah.
Well, that was a lot of fun. And I saw, and you reminded me, the two dancers from the Dance Theater of Harlem, and their names are
Rhea and Lawrence.
Rhea and Lawrence, and I understand they're coming back.
Yes.
They're going to be back. And can you describe a little bit about what we saw there, some of the dance moves and things that you folks know and how to do?
Well, what you just saw was the candy canes and the ribbon candies going around their, sort of like, you know how factory, when you work in a factory, they have the makers. Well, the lady who was sort of looked fat, that was her. And we were circling around her and doing time levees and leaps.
Now you said a ton leve. Now everybody knows what a leap is. You go up in the air and you come down, unless you're really good, I suppose. What is a ton leve?
A ton leve is where you start with your front leg and stretch your back leg, stretch and point your toe. You're sort of like that. Then you put your arms up like that.
Okay. And Brooke, you mentioned a different move. What other kinds of moves were going on in there?
Well, they were prancing, and what else did you do?
Prancing and
A lot of movement was going on.
Chasse.
Chasse. Now what is
Yes.
that?
That means to slide.
To slide.
Yes.
And this is all French.
Yes.
Okay.
Ballet
Because they were there
French.
first and they got this stuff or something. Toni, as a mom, what are the logistics? How do you get your daughter to these, or does she get there on her own, or what are the duties of a parent when they're getting?
It's a very busy time for me. She goes to dance on Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. So it's a lot of
Yeah.
scheduling and
Sure.
being on time, because they have to be on time.
Yeah, it's showtime. Yeah.
But it's a lot of hard work, but it's a lot of fun for them.
And then once they're there in rehearsal, do you stay? Do you have to go back and come back?
No, I just stay.
You stay there.
I just usually stay.
Bring something to read or do
Bring something to read.
And you're employed full time, so I mean, it isn't as though you're just waiting around to do this. So
It's kind of a real nice, relaxing time for me, because I can read some materials that I haven't had time to get to.
sure. And then you get, as you said, to see it from backstage, but also, did you get out and see it from the audience, or were you busy backstage all the
I
time?
saw the one performance during the day, the school performance, the sellout,
Okay.
and then the evening one I was working backstage.
All right,
which
so they
was
make
really
use of you,
exciting.
don't they?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's-
I'm glad you mentioned that, because there are the performances are the same, really, different people involved, but there are two ways that people can go and see the show, and let's make sure we mention the dates and the times of these shows, and we'll put something up on the screen, too. So when is the show that the public can come to see?
They can come see it December 11th at 2 p.m. and at 7:30 p.m. And the school performances are the 9th and 10th, and that's where different schools come to see it during the day at 10:30.
Okay, so if there was a school group interested, they could get a group ticket sale kind of thing for those shows, and then the general public is invited on the, what'd you say, the 11th?
11th.
Okay, and it's all at Northrop Auditorium, in area you're familiar with over there at the University of Minnesota, and it sounds like a lot of fun. Great.
It is. They added a second school performance because we did so well last year. We had a sellout crowd.
Okay, so this is real popular.
Yes, it is. It's becoming real popular.
Great.
And I heard that they're offering it to schools over in St. Paul to come to it.
Okay. Well, that's wonderful. And I want to congratulate our dancers and the parents that are so involved. That's a
Thank
lot
you.
of work. And congratulations. Look forward to seeing you on stage at Northrop. So, Tiana, thanks. Toni, Brooke, thanks for being on the show. Well, we hope you've enjoyed our guests and the conversations we've had here on this edition of Artifacts. If by chance you have any guests that you'd like to see in the show, why don't you call us at the City Cable 34 hotline. That's 673-2234, and we'll try and get a guest on that you might like to get to know a little bit better. Maybe we'll give them an interview. And right at the end of this, we'll have a short calendar of events, things going on here in the Minneapolis area. And look for us next time on Artifacts. This is Phill Lindsay.